Welcome to the Dynasty Academy. Michael Washington, Mark is being a pompous ass before we came on air, and Mark Ongst.
Well, I mean, you are. I'm not. I mean, you are.
Eli Manuel.
Why would you draft a wide receiver, too?
Eli, you can cut this out.
You could leave it in, too.
Restart.
Kyler Murray has a fantastic arm. It's just the decision-making for him, for me. Michael Vick just made better decisions, I feel like, overall.
Makes sense. I said 1 or 2 inches, growing 1 or 2 inches, and you're like...
And he's still going,
I have leagues on too many apps. I don't know what to follow.
Welcome to a post-NFL rookie draft edition of Dynasty Academy. Classes in session. I'm Michael Washington. He's Mark Ongst. As always, we're here to discuss everything for you from Dynasty to Devy to C2C. Tonight, we're going to focus a little more on the Dynasty portion of this. Right? We're going to focus on the rookie drafts, some trends that we're seeing in these drafts, some undervalued guys, some overvalued guys, similar conversations that you normally have. As always, first and foremost, obviously give a shout out to Sam and Shady Sports Network for giving us a platform to be able to have this awesome show and bring this to you almost every week. Last week we took off because we had some time to gather to talk about what we were doing, and we didn't do one for the NFL draft, so this is our first show back. Mark, how you doing first and foremost, my man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, same shit, different day, my man. Just sitting here looking at these rookie drafts and wondering a couple things and how it applies to us here in the upcoming season in 3 months?
Falling asleep in the ones that don't have clocks?
Yeah. We have one league. Okay, we have one league for the viewers out there right now that doesn't have a clock every year, and this league literally drafts over the course of 6 months. I swear we get done by Christmas. Like, it's so bad how long it is. We've had 2 picks in the equivalent of a week and a half.
Today is the 9th, correct?
Yeah, today is the 9th.
So this draft has been going for 12 days.
12 days.
And we are in... So it is 14. So there's two extra picks. So in a normal 12-team league, we are on pick 2-4.
So 14 days.
12 days.
12 days. We are on pick 2-4. And with the way you and I draft, and
we had 2 picks.
And we had 2 picks, and the fact that the first pick was made almost as soon as the draft started, we're talking 3 picks, basically boom, boom, boom. And that leaves the additional... And
Eli drafted in between our 2 picks, which were pretty quick.
Okay, so Eli was pretty quick. So that leaves 8 picks over the 12-day period that we've had. Right? No.
Might be 7, because
there
might have been a couple that actually went quick to each other. There was one day where, because we drafted in that day, I think in that day, half the draft got done in that day. So the other 6 picks that have been literally in 12 days. But we just had a pick. We just had a pick. Breaking news. A pick was just made.
Oh, wow. Well, that's good to know. Guys, if you're out there listening to this and you have a league that does not have a clock and you have an ownership groups like we have, please, by all means, put a clock on. Put a clock on, because your draft is going to last all summer long. And we finished a 30-round draft. Probably 20 rounds of that draft we probably finished in that time frame.
No, we're done.
I know,
started,
but
I think, the same time.
Did we start at the same time? Okay.
Well, we waited till the draft was over, so we may have started a day earlier.
We finished a 30-round draft in the time.
We finished 30 rounds.
Yep. Okay.
Because we waited for the NFL draft to end.
Yeah, no doubt.
I got my wish.
Yeah,
Because you always like to start them before the thing starts.
Yes, because it makes it more intriguing.
Yeah, And then when you draft somebody who gets freaking displaced by 3 wide receivers drafted by that team.
It's not my fault that you don't know how to draft.
Yes, I do. I know how to draft with the information I have.
That's funny because Mark's a co-owner of mine in several leagues, and I'm a co-owner of his in a couple leagues. So, it's funny that we go back and forth like this sometimes. I'm very quick to reject trades. He's the type that will let him sit.
Oh, I will. I'm very bad with that sometimes. Like I'll look at it, and if it's like a air trade, I'll forget about it because I'll go away from it and then completely forget about it.
For the viewers out there, I want to talk about how bad he is about sitting on picks or trades. I literally sent him a trade in every league we are in together. Some of them probably should have been ignored. Some of them were actually not so bad. And he literally let them sit there for 3 days before I had to go through and revoke every single one of them.
No. You didn't have to go through and do anything with them. I was busy, and I told you I was busy and would look at them. You got too impatient.
3 days,
decided
bro.
to revoke them.
We talk every day.
You want to know how many trades I have sitting already that have been sitting for longer than that?
Oh, I can only imagine. I can only imagine with you. I really honestly can only imagine with you.
But sometimes it's because I literally forget about them. Like I look at it and I go, I'll come back to that later. I don't go back to it later. You know, you want to know one of the biggest reasons why? I wish Sleeper, this is the one thing I don't like about Sleeper. I wish when you got a trade, instead of just being a DM or whatever, it like put in some kind of like notification on the like outside of the league page when you're scrolling your leagues to let you know this is the league you got one in. Because like if you play with the same people in multiple leagues, I'll see one come through and I'm like, oh crap, which league is this for? And sometimes I don't want to read the DM, so I don't forget about the trade because that's the only way I'll remember. So I leave it as an unread DM to know the trade's there, but then I don't know what league it is to go look at the trade to see how bad it is. So
yeah,
like, I need a better notification system of my trades too.
I mean, it's not that terrible of a notification system. I think you're just a little.
No, but I in general, I wish the league that you got it in had like when there's a new chat in general for that league, it shows it on your league homepage, like my all my league, the little red dot on the side to let me know there's a new notification.
So kind of like a dashboard of sorts.
I wish it did the same thing when I got a trade, that like to click on that league to let me know that that's the league I got one in, or like maybe it was green to let me know there's a trade there, like some kind of notification to let me know that I got a trade in that league.
Okay, I guess that's fair. I guess that's fair. I mean, they do put the little red dot up against your name or whatever. Just throwing that out there on your team side for the trade.
Yeah, when you're in the league. But when you don't know what league the trade came from, because there are days when somebody's clicking all to send 1,000 messages to the entire league all day.
Who does that?
I don't know. It's not me though.
Hey, I have to be an active commissioner. Have you seen some of these commissioners, Mark?
Yes.
I have to be an active commissioner.
Within like 4 hours, you had 5 or 6 different at all messages. And you want to know what they don't do? They don't go away unless you go in and click on them, each one of them separately in the DM section. Not even if you go to the league and read it. It still sits there as a mention until you go to the mentions. That bothers me too.
I hate the fact that I have to do the mention and in the chat, and otherwise every little red dot stays there the whole time. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. And you literally sometimes will go through every one of our leagues. And this isn't like we have like 3 leagues.
Okay. All right. Now that Mark's all riled up about the the notification system at Sleeper.
I love Sleeper.
I do too. I love Sleeper. I think Sleeper's great.
Minor things that I would like change.
Yeah,
Minor,
that's all nitpicking.
not anything. Yeah, literally.
I mean, we can go back to my fantasy league if you want.
No, thank you.
All right. So tonight we're going to focus more on the Dynasty side of things. We have a Dynasty draft starting tomorrow. Well, I mean, the clock is official. I mean, the draft is officially started, but there's no clock right now. Basically, what we're going to do is
Hold on, before we move on. I don't know why you do that all the time. I don't know why you schedule the draft for one day, knowing you're going to start it when you say, "Oh, we're going to draft tomorrow." Just start it then. Just do it. I don't know why you do that to yourself every time.
Well, I do it that way because not everybody pays attention all at the same time. So even if I tag all, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to be coming into the chat and see it.
You start without a clock every time. Just be like, "Hey, starting the draft now. No clock till tomorrow." You will send that message, then an hour later go, "All right, we're going to start it now."
Well, yeah, because I mean, at the point in time, it depends on. I look at actually who's on the clock.
It's a difference.
Whoever has the first pick.
It's a difference. You're not putting a clock on anyway. Who cares?
Because if it's
just start it.
Daryl.
Just start it.
If it's Daryl, I'm putting a clock on him immediately. I do not care.
You're not going to. You're not going to. I already know. It doesn't not matter who it is. You are going to always send draft time Monday at 8 a.m. Oh, it's Sunday at 5 p.m. Let's just start the draft now, and we'll go with no clock until tomorrow.
Yes, because it gives people something to look forward to, look at it, and if they don't want to check back in until Monday, that's fine. But if somebody wants to go in earlier, then they can go in earlier.
Don't set the time for Monday when you're going to start it
No, you got to set it for a time so that way they know when to check in. If they don't check in, if you just say, I'm going to start it now, clock starts whenever, they need to know when to check in.
They will, because you're going to add all of them 4 times before that draft.
Well, I might have to, yes. Anyways, we have a Dynasty draft that has started, but there's no clock right now.
I have the second pick. I don't know what I want to do yet.
Yeah, well, I need a quarterback, but this is part of a conversation that we're going to be discussing here. I was going to offer you something for Derek Carr, then I realized it's Derek Carr, and I decided against it.
No.
So Devy and C2C is a little bit different because you're focused because you have the rights to the college players already. So a lot of those drafts are depleted across the board. So we're going to remove that for tonight, and we're going to focus on the Dynasty spot where if you do a rookie draft, the rookie pool is completely full, right? That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to decide with. That's how we're going to address this particular topic for tonight, just for the viewers out there that are watching here on the Shady Sports Network. I find this interesting, Mark, and I find this interesting because for me, I don't know if you've noticed any trends. Now, you said that you've had 2 like full-fledged rookie drafts so far or whatever.
2 regular Dynasty rookie drafts.
I don't know if in those 2 drafts you've noticed any kind of trends or whatever, but you and I discussed a little bit as co-owners about sitting at that 6, 7, 8 spot. And if you need a quarterback in that range, it doesn't feel like it's a desperate need to trade up to get a quarterback like in past years. And it's not just because 6 quarterbacks went in the top 12. It's because 5 of those 6 quarterbacks actually landed in good spots. You know what I mean? Like, or landed in intriguing spots, I should say.
If you believe in those quarterbacks to at least get you 2 to 3 years of starting potential, it's a great draft to need quarterbacks in sitting in the middle of the league. Usually sitting in the middle of the league is not a good thing because you're going to end up with not the best wide receiver, not the top quarterbacks, most likely not the best running back if it's a good class. If it's a mediocre class, well, you don't know what you're getting. This year, when you look at there's 3 quarterbacks everybody seems to talk about.
Yep.
And then there's 3 wide receivers everybody seems to talk about. So when you sit at that 7 spot, you're still getting a quarterback in either JJ or Bo, or, I mean, let's be honest. Michael Penix was drafted with the 8th pick with the idea he'll probably start in 2 years.
Yep.
I'm going to say after 2 seasons, he will be the starter.
I
So
think
if you
yeah, I mean, it will depend on what the cap space is in Atlanta with
they
it, but
have a way to
yeah,
get out of it after 2 years.
after
Is
2
where most
years,
of his
yeah,
guaranteed money is fit into. I think they did it
yeah,
on purpose. I don't know that they were planning to draft Penix, but at 2 years they put out most of his guaranteed money into.
right.
So if you are a team sitting in that spot, that 7 spot, and you already maybe have some older quarterbacks who are for sure going to start. Maybe you're sitting on Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield, and you're good. Then you could draft Penix because you could sit on him. It's a good spot to be in for once. When usually that 7 spot is like
Miserable.
you either need to get up or get
Yeah.
out
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're left with I guess I'll draft this guy. Like you're left with where 10 and 11 are this year in most drafts. So
Yeah, what's interesting to me is like we sat at 7 in 2 leagues where we really needed a quarterback, and neither one of us felt like we needed to make a move up. We got several offers from a guy in front of us to move back. One guy sent us about 3,700 offers for the pick that we're not going to trade, even though I told them that we weren't going to trade it. But we didn't feel the need that we needed to make that move up because we felt comfortable taking a JJ McCarthy or a Bo Nix, knowing that there's a good opportunity we were going to get 2 to 3 years out of it. But we also felt comfortable sitting there because if one of those quarterbacks snuck in and Rome Odunze fell, we were able to take Rome at that spot and just not address quarterback as badly, right? Like it's just like we had a starter. It was just one of those things where we needed another one and maybe some depth, but we felt comfortable enough taking Rome, knowing that the points that we were going to get would be good enough to start in a super flex spot and be okay with it.
and did we had in both drafts? Did we have 2 picks, or was it just the one we had 2 picks?
No, we had one that had 2 picks, and there was one that we had 1 pick. So I think
okay. So
yeah,
both drafts we ended up with JJ, 1 at 7, 1 at 8.
right.
The other one, the one where we had 2 picks, we ended up with Malik because we had 5. So we were in that one. I think we were at 8 then, sitting at 8 and just holding, knowing we were going to end up with either Bo Nix or JJ,
Right.
whichever one was still sitting there,
Yeah.
and then Brian Thomas, Ladd, or Keon, or I mean, a running back really. But those we it was easier to take Neighbors first to get that high end, knowing most likely in the 2 picks in between us, Bo Nix and JJ weren't going to go. I mean, had they? Oh well, we could have pivoted. We could have gone with another wide receiver, and I think I even said that too. We could just take 2 wide receivers to a team. I think we have pretty good wide receivers on already, but we could package 2 of those wide receivers for a quarterback if need be. I mean, that's so. I think we went best player available, even though we may have needed quarterback in both. I don't think we were either in one of them stressing like, oh, we have to get a quarterback. We have to get a quarterback. If it fell, I mean, if the top 5 picks were all quarterbacks, we would have just gone wide receiver and just called it a day.
Yeah, no, and that's part of the strategy with this particular draft class that I feel like you don't get with draft classes in the past, right? Like you're not getting this in the past where a lot of people after pick like 5 or 6, they start kind of panicking and want to, or not even 5 or 6, maybe sometimes 3 or 4, and really just want to try to panic and move up to take, X player here. In this draft, it doesn't really feel like that. And then on the back half of the draft, when you're looking at 10, 11, 12, you're almost in that spot where you're like, I want to trade down.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm okay not trading down because the player pool is just kind of filled with a bunch of guys that have potential in landing spots. I mean, that's just the way that I'm looking at this class. Like, I feel like that there's not a need for as much movement because of how deep this class is. Like, one of the other trends that I've noticed is earlier before the NFL draft, we talked about Brock Bowers, right? And we felt that Brock Bowers was going to be a guy that was going to be drafted somewhere in the top 8. I've seen him go as high as 6 in the league, and I've seen him go as low as 11. Like, he's not in a steady spot, even though he's, the clear-cut tight end, number 1. And I don't know if that's just because people are on the Mike train like me, who hates tight ends, or if it's just because um, of the talent in the front half. Like you said, there's 5 quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers, and then you could factor in Jonathan Brooks has been kind of sneaking in there, as a top 10 pick as well. It's a very interesting dynamic makeup for this year in particular, where it doesn't feel like moving up and down is as much of a necessity. At least to me, that's how I felt.
Well, and I think a lot of that just has to do with the depth at quarterback and wide receiver together. We had 6 quarterbacks go in the top 13 or 14 of the
Top
NFL draft,
12.
whatever.
Top
Was it
12.
top 12?
Yeah.
6 in the top 12. So only one of them landed in a spot where he's not starting probably this season. The other 5 all have a path. JJ probably won't, but there's a path. Bo Nix, maybe he won't, but there's a path. The other 3, I think for sure are. I don't see a world where they don't, unless they just really don't pick up on things. But you don't normally see that. You see 2 that usually have, the top 2, maybe the 1 and 3, 1 whatever, but not 5 out of 6 that are almost most likely to start. And then for wide receiver, you have 3 guys. Now, I know Marvin is what everybody considers the top guy. That's fine. No problem with that. But the other 2 are not far behind him.
No.
I don't think anybody's like, oh, man, I was at 4 and I got Malik Neighbors. Oh, man. I thought I'd get Marvin Harrison. I think it's interesting to see, because the other thing I'm noticing is Caleb is not the 101 everywhere.
Right. Yeah. So I started seeing the 2. Yeah.
Sneaking into that spot,
Mm-hmm.
which is very surprising to me. And I mean, I'm even surprised that he's going over May and Daniels almost automatically at this point. I think in both drafts that I've seen so far, he went 1 or 2. So in normal Superflex drafts, when you have quarterbacks get drafted 1, 2, 3, I mean, we're not talking about the quarterbacks drafted in the 20s and the 30s.
Right.
1, 2, 3. And they aren't 1, 2, 3 in your rookie draft. That's a little surprising for how good Marvin is.
Yeah,
surprising.
And the other thing is I think with those top 3 wide receivers, I think the reason why we're seeing Rome slide a little bit is because he doesn't have as clear-cut path to playing time immediately as the other 2 do. Because the other 2 landed in really, really, shitty wide receiver situations, wide open spots, whatever you want to say. Whereas Rome is going to be kind of sitting. I think that the Bears will play a little more wide open than they have in the past. I think he'll definitely see the field and will contribute this year. But DJ Moore and Keenan Allen in front of him, and let's face it, Keenan Allen, for as great of a year as he had last year with the Chargers, he's not a spring chicken anymore. I mean, he's going to be 33 when the season hits at some point in time during the season. He's definitely still a baller, but when that wall hits and that cliff falls fast. So Rome might have a chance to carve out a role this year and really do some damage.
And let's not forget, yes, he's 33, so that's one tick that on the downside. This is a new team. Now,
right.
Yes, he's had different coaching staffs. I understand that, but this is a new team, a new organization. This is a lot of new things to learn, and you don't play in a dome or in California.
Right.
You are out in the cold, Keenan Allen. Now, I know you have to go to Denver and you have to go to Kansas City, so those are cold, but it's only twice out of the year. You are going to play.
Depending on when you play him. If you play him in September,
sure,
it may not be so cold.
But you're going to have at least 4 games in the cold just in Chicago, depending on when it gets cold there. And that doesn't mean you still have to go to Green Bay.
Right.
And then wherever else you play otherwise, because at least, Minnesota and Detroit are in domes.
Domes, yeah.
But I mean, he's in both drafts, he won 6. And I expect him to go over Malik and Marvin every time. It's just people see those 2, I think, as these. They see those 2 as the Ferraris, where Rome is the Corvette. He's not as flashy. So
I mean,
he slides to 6 each time.
I love Rome. I think
if I'm in the 6th spot, I'm happy about it.
Exactly.
Because I think he's the more well-rounded of them. maybe his upside is not as strong as those two could be, but his floor is way higher. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I mean, I think if I remember correctly on my wide receiver rankings, I put Rome first.
you had him at 1.
I had him at 1. So I mean, for me, it's just I like the makeup of him. I'm not as thrilled about being in Chicago, just because Chicago doesn't have a very good track record overall of, you know, really good wide receivers, but you know, or being able to produce really good wide receivers. You know, the same with the quarterback position, but they're putting pieces in place that I think Rome can succeed, and hopefully he does. I think his talent is definitely good enough to the point. And honestly, like you said, Rome going at 6, I'm thrilled if I'm at 6 and Rome is there for me. If I don't desperately need a quarterback to take a guy like JJ or Bo there, because the potential to me is slightly higher than Marvin and slightly higher than Malik, but like we discussed across the board, it's all splitting hairs and it's all by like, you know, a smidgen across the board. For whoever you had put 1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter, right? Like we talked about that. So
Yeah.
what is
before we move on, let's talk about the Bears real quick.
Do we have to?
No, because I do not. If Caleb goes out there and throws for over 4,000 yards and has a good season,
God.
I do not want to hear a single person talk about Justin Fields as a bust. Because do not talk to me about the weapons that Caleb Williams was handed and what Justin Fields did not have in any single season. You gave him DJ Moore for the one season, and it was DJ Moore's best freaking season of his entire career.
And that was it. It was just DJ Moore. And Cole Kmet was already there, but it was just DJ Moore.
Yes.
He had Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, and Dante Foreman at running back. And Darnell Mooney, who was already declining.
Allen Robinson,
was already declining, and Allen
can't move. Stuck in a spot, run to a spot, and turn. He was Jason Witten at wide receiver.
Speaking of Allen Robinson,
and not as good as.
Speaking of Allen Robinson, breaking news: he signed with the Giants today. So yeah, he's gonna go draft him.
I don't want to hear a single person compare, because their situations are just so opposite. I don't want to hear. Yeah, don't want to hear
the Bears failed Justin Fields. I will die on that hill, and I don't care.
Yes,
I will die on that hill and have no issues with it. I absolutely will. One trend that is surprising to you, or one undervalued guy, a guy that's going later than you expected, that's in a good spot, that you think could carve out a role almost instantly, and you know, think of it as your Puka Nacua, you know, or that's kind of a deep sleeper, but think of it like your Cooper Kupp from a couple of years ago, or you know, one of those guys that's hovering around, you know, maybe a late second, early third, or mid third that you think is going to outproduce where he's being drafted. Let's put it that way.
Jermaine Burton.
Cincinnati.
Yes, because even if T. Higgins were to somehow sign a long-term deal at this point, which seems very unlikely, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins all had good seasons together. The three of them working together. So even if T. Higgins is to stick around, I don't mind Jermaine Burton in that offense. I don't think T. Higgins is going to stick around. So I think Jermaine Burton has a real chance to be their wide receiver 2, because Tyler Boyd is gone and there is nobody else. So Burton is going end of the second, early third, I think is where I've pretty much seen him.
Yep.
So you are potentially getting a wide receiver 2 on their team. Not saying he will be a wide receiver 2 in his rookie season, but a wide receiver 2 on a team who likes to throw the ball, whose running backs don't look very good right now, so might throw the ball even more than they normally did with a good running back. So yeah, give me Jermaine Burton. I mean, if you are legitimately the 3-1, so you have the 101, and you walked away with Jermaine Burton as your third pick, that's a pretty good steal.
And he went 301 in one of our drafts too, as well, and that might be the one that you were just looking at for the board, but
he went 212 in the other one. So he went 212 and 3-1.
212 and 3. For me, it's Malachi Corley. Like let's talk real quickly about Corley and the Jets. Like they signed Mike Williams or traded for Mike Williams or whatever it may be. Sure,
Signed.
but this dude is on a football field or in the hospital. There's no in between with this guy. He's constantly hurt. He has a terrible injury history, and they really don't have anybody. I know you can say Alan Lazard or whoever, but I meant after Garrett Wilson.
Okay,
and you didn't let me finish.
Okay.
After Garrett Wilson and after Mike Williams, they really don't have anybody.
You can just stop it after Garrett Wilson. They don't have anybody. We can stop there.
All right. After Garrett Wilson, they don't have anybody. So for me, Malachi Corley is a guy who can see the field. Now, the question obviously becomes, does Aaron Rodgers like him? Right? Because we all see that if Aaron Rodgers doesn't like him, he's not going to see the field. Like we know
they're going to be roommates. He offered to let him stay in his house or
it is. That's a good start, anyways. But just in general, though, I mean, Tom Brady let Antonio Brown stay in his house too. Just saying.
Weirdly frank. I mean, Antonio wasn't as crazy. Let's be honest.
Did he quit like 4 weeks later? Game?
He played. No, he played the whole season with us. It was the second season with us when he quit halfway through. Okay. Well, it was most of the season. It was like week 15.
Okay, well, whatever. But Malachi Corley being with Aaron Rodgers, that's obviously a good thing. And for me, I mean, he was at 307 in one of the leagues that we were in. I saw him go at 309. And then in another league I saw him, he was like at 305. So he's right there in the middle of that third round. And he's going later than some guys that I really honestly don't understand, to be honest with you. And that includes at the running back position as well. So if you're sitting there in the middle of the third and you are looking at a receiver possibly, like I think Corley has a potential. He's going to outplay where he gets drafted most likely.
Well, I'll give you a bonus one in Jalen McMillan, because he's another guy who could be the third wide receiver or will become a 1 or 2 wide receiver on that team when Mike Evans / Chris Godwin are no longer there.
Yep.
Also going in the middle third. But let's talk about one of those players that is going ahead of Corley and McMillan in Marshawn Lloyd. I like Marshawn Lloyd. I am a big Marshawn Lloyd fan. He had fumbles issues, so that's a con on Marshawn Lloyd. And if you fumble in the NFL, you will lose your job very quickly unless you are a superstar. And I don't know that Marshawn Lloyd is a superstar. Solid back, not a superstar most likely. He gets drafted to the Green Bay Packers, who just signed Josh Jacobs for a running back, a very substantial contract. Especially for a running back. Let me reiterate. For a running back.
Yeah.
They signed him to be their guy. Because you didn't have to do that. There were so many running backs you could have got for cheaper. You could have kept Aaron Jones but you signed Jacobs to be your guy. You brought A.J. Dillon back on some weird contract, restricted free agent thingy. But you brought him back. He's going to get paid. He's on the team. So Marshawn Lloyd is at best your 2-3 running back on that team, with a guy in front of them who's being paid to be a bell cow style running back. Now, it doesn't mean he needs to be, but I don't see drafting him ahead of Corley.
Yeah, it does.
Ahead of McMillan.
It doesn't make sense to me that Marshawn Lloyd is being drafted as, I don't want to say as high, but I mean in front of a lot of these guys, because I do like Marshawn. I'm with you there. I do think that Marshawn is a good running back. He was one of my favorites coming out, but at the point of when you're looking for a player that you want, that those middle rounds, to me, I kind of stuttered through that. Sorry, but like when you're in those middle rounds, to me, those middle rounds are golden to try to find somebody that might be able to contribute right away.
I was going to say upside. Huge upside guys.
Well, upside too, but they could possibly contribute right away. Like a guy that is in a good situation, that has good talent, that's going to outplay where he got drafted, right? Like that's essentially what we're looking for. And to me, in those rounds, those are the rounds that we look at the most. For me, in the third, fourth rounds, that is perfect for that. Another guy that kind of surprises me that is going ahead of Corley, probably more so than Burton, is Ben Sinnott. Like, I love Ben Sinnott, but he gives me so much of a Kyle Juszczyk vibe, that a great NFL player, but maybe not a great fantasy player. Now, he does have Chris Cooley tendencies, right? He does have Chris Cooley tendencies, so there's a chance that he could be a contributor down the road. But tight end is another one of those positions where you have to wait on these guys. You have to wait because they don't come right in and thrive unless they're Sam Laporta.
He's being drafted as the tight end too in the class.
Yeah.
And I know he was drafted in the NFL draft that way, but drafting tight ends in the NFL draft is not drafting them in fantasy. They're totally two different things. You do not get points for blocking. You do not get points for opening the hole up for Brian Robinson. And Ben not being a fullback tight end hybrid is, if Washington doesn't use him that way, they'll be dumb, because that's where he's really good at. But for fantasy, that's not helpful. Sure, sometimes you pick up Kyle Juszczyk off the waivers because your team is so terrible and you're just looking to throw somebody in your running back spot to maybe score you some points. But to draft him at the 304 ahead of Bucky Irving, ahead of Jalen McMillan, ahead of Malachi Corley, ahead of Devontae Walker, ahead of Brendan Rice, ahead of Jordan Travis, even Theo Johnson, Jacob Cowan, Ron Baker, guys who Luke McCaffrey, all have much better chances to score you fantasy points, who may do less overall in their NFL careers, but this is about fantasy. Yeah. It's not about getting the guy that's going to play for 12, 13, 14 seasons and score 100 points total through an entire season at best. I mean, what was Kyle Juszczyk's even best season?
I honestly, you'd have to ask Daryl, and the fact that he probably had him as one of his running backs in that league that he won the championship in when he had Rex Burkhead as a starter, because I'm pretty sure Kyle Juszczyk was there as well. Okay, how about on the flip side of this, Mark? Who's a guy that's being overdrafted in your opinion? Or a guy that you
97 points were his top season in 2015 in Baltimore.
In Baltimore. Juszczyk was in Baltimore?
That's where he started.
Was it?
He played 4 years at Baltimore, 13 to 16, and then moved on to San Francisco in 2017.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. He was drafted. That's right. He was drafted in Baltimore. That's right. I remember that now. All right. How about a guy that's being overdrafted? Do you think, or a guy that's?
I just told you, Marshawn Lloyd.
No.
That's why he transitioned into Marshawn Lloyd.
Okay, I guess so.
That was the point of that. I did that on purpose.
Well, all right. So Marshawn Lloyd being overdrafted. Well, I meant just like in general, like as far as like
Blake Corum.
Blake Corum is a guy that's my guy too. Is Blake Corum. He's being drafted as the running back.
Xavier Worthy.
He's being Xavier Worthy to me is an interesting one, and primarily because of I feel like this is a trap when it comes to Xavier Worthy, like it is every year with a guy who's really, really fucking fast, right? Like you're talking about a guy who, set the record, combine record, yada yada yada. He went to a team that suffered from the most drops in the NFL season last year. Meanwhile, Worthy struggled with drops at Texas. So, congrats.
And we're drafting him in the mid to late first round.
I've seen him go as high as 106 in a league.
So that means he got drafted. Well, is that a one quarterback or two quarterback?
It was a 2 quarterback league.
So that means he got drafted over Rome. Okay. I could say it had to be over Rome or one of the quarterbacks.
He got drafted over Rome. He was the third wide receiver taken in that. And I know that the Rashee Rice thing, that's everything that's going on, and Rashee Rice is definitely in the process of, torpedoing his NFL career.
That doesn't help Xavier Worthy.
It doesn't help Worthy at all. Exactly. It hurts him bad.
I can roll two people over top of him then, and his speed is completely neutralized.
Yep. Doesn't even matter then at that point in time. So it hurts him. I mean, Hollywood on the other side should help a little bit because Hollywood's fast, but I mean, Hollywood is what?
So I run 2 deep safeties the whole time and don't let you run by me.
Like, as far as fantasy is concerned,
you don't have a possession wide receiver. You're literally hoping Travis Kelce catches 1,000 balls then. You have no possession wide receivers.
Yeah,
you're throwing deep the entire time.
Yeah, with Rashee Rice doing what he's doing, there's no possession wide receivers on that roster. None. There's not a single one.
I guess Justin Watson, go pick him up because clearly he's going to be their regular wide receiver that you're going to throw intermediate routes to and catch 100 passes this year.
Yeah, Xavier Worthy being overdrafted definitely is a good one too as well.
You're drafting him over Brian Thomas, over Keon Coleman, over Ladd McConkey, over. That's probably it. I mean, I'll take him over Ricky Pearsall probably, but like I don't know why you're taking him as the wide receiver 4. He's not that kind of wide. It's like drafting Deshaun Jackson.
Yep.
Great wide receiver for what he was. Not great for fantasy.
He was so boom or bust. I mean,
you're gonna have huge draft Xavier Worthy in a best ball all day, every day.
Yeah, best ball, absolutely.
He is gonna be great for 3 games.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're never gonna start him in any one of those because it's never gonna be the one you start him in.
I don't feel comfortable. Xavier Worthy's not a guy for me that I'm drafting and ever feeling comfortable in his entire career leaving in my wide receiver spot.
Unless he gets developed as an actual wide receiver.
Unless he somehow turns into Tyreek Hill, which is what everybody thinks he's going to be.
Yeah, because he's fast. Like, every fast wide receiver that goes to Kansas City, Tyreek Hill.
But then you have to ask yourself the question, that's not like everybody wants to compare all these rookies to the next this person, the next that person, and it's always one of 2 elite players in that position. And it's like the elite positions are elite because that's them. Like the duplicating that is not every single year. Every single year.
Every really good running back that comes out every couple of years, the generational
talent.
You take away what the guys before him who actually were that. Every 2-3 years, there's a generational running back. Generational talent right there.
Yeah.
It's not anymore then.
And every year at wide receiver, it's always the next this person, the next that person, the next this person. And it's like just
Malik Neighbors. He's the next Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Why? Because he went to LSU?
Because he went to LSU. That's the only reason why. But you know who also went to LSU? Terrace Marshall, DJ Shark.
Yep.
Like, I mean, they went to LSU as well too. Should we start comparing? Malik Neighbors is going to be the next Terrace Marshall. Like, stop. Like, let these guys play out because you never know what you're actually going to get. Yes, the hype surrounding them is good. Yes, the talent looks great. But stop comparing them. And it's more so the guys on the back half. Because the guys on the back half are always the ones that are like being compared to this person, that person, in 3rd round here, 3rd round there. I always say this person's style or game reminds me of this person. I don't say they are that next person because you don't know. That's the point. That's the reason why they're rookies. That's the reason why you get to see it. Like Ladd McConkey, the next Cooper Kupp. To me, I don't see Cooper Kupp. I think that he has a very similar play style as Cooper Kupp because he played a lot of the same route running in the middle of the field, but I see more Troy Brown. Like when I look at Ladd McConkey, he's got bigger size than Troy, which is great, but that's who I see. He reminds me more of Troy Brown. I will never call him the next Troy Brown, and I will never call him the next Cooper Kupp just because he's a white wide receiver.
Like he's white, you have to compare him to a white guy. You can't compare the way guys play to. It's funny because we want to say Xavier Worthy is Tyreek Hill because he's fast, but yet when MVS signed with Kansas City, he was Tyreek's replacement. Look, they're going to trade Tyreek. MVS is going to step in. Look what we're going to do. We're going to have the best MVS we've ever seen.
Sky Moore.
Why can't Xavier Worthy be MVS? Why can't he be Sky Moore? Why
Right,
does he have to be Tyreek Hill just because he's fast? Tyreek didn't even run that fast of a 40 himself.
No, he was just he's just got quickness. A lot of quickness for him is like Tyreek is so quick. It's shifty.
Tyreek, yeah, he's Tyreek is a good wide receiver. He just happens to be fast, but he's actually a very good wide receiver. He runs very good routes,
especially against really bad defenses.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the entire Dolphins offense. They can feast on that. That's the quarterback more because he was good with the Chiefs. Let's not forget that he was good with the Chiefs. But Tyreek was I know part of his fall was because
fifth
of
round
his off the field issues, so he fell to the 5th round. But he still wasn't being talked as a 1st or 2nd round talent.
No,
before any of that.
No,
I don't even remember where he went to school. It was some no-name school, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was some backwoods community college or something. I don't even remember where it was.
He was fast, but he developed himself as a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Most of these guys, when they're fast, they don't care. They're like, I'm fast. I'll run by everybody. Oh, a lot of corners in the NFL are also fast. And the other thing is, defenders barreling down at your quarterback makes it really hard to throw the ball really far in a great arc. And sometimes it works. And other times, the corner has a chance to catch back up to you because you're slowing down to catch the ball.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And let's be honest, too. This offense runs from the inside out. It runs from a good, solid run game. They don't always put on, significant numbers, but they only need a guy to go for 79 yards and average 4 yards a carry because it runs from the inside out. Travis Kelce then opens up the field from the inside, and then it moves out. That's what this offense has always been. It just so happened that Tyreek Hill, like we talked about, is an elite, I'll call him elite, an elite wide receiver that benefited from being able to play from that inside out game. And then obviously Patrick Mahomes being there and, Alex Smith having a, career year. I think it was that 1 year that Tyreek had with him was, amazing. Yeah, they did. I think it was that 1 year that Mahomes sat. I don't know. Was Hill and Mahomes in the same class though? Or was Hill the year before that?
Oh, see, I didn't think they played. I didn't think Tyreek Hill and
I think they did. Maybe they didn't. Maybe I'm thinking backwards. But I could have sworn that Hill played at least 1 year with Alex. But regardless, if he didn't, then he just so happened to have Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback for his entire career. I mean, for the majority of his career, he had Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. So, and now he's on a very fast playing offense in Miami.
You are right. He played 1 season with
Alex Smith.
Yep.
Yeah.
83 or 61 for 593 and 6 touchdowns. But Alex Smith does not clearly have the arm that Patrick Mahomes has, or the ability to extend plays, which also benefits a Tyreek Hill type play.
Correct. I want to talk a little bit about Roman Wilson. He's another guy. I didn't mention this to you in the chat when we came on, but I want to talk. I'm thinking about it now. Why does it feel like Roman Wilson is being passed over? Is it just the talent isn't, people aren't sold on the talent, or because, I mean, he landed in a good situation. His play style is very compatible and comparable with George Pickens. I mean, for what it was at Michigan, I mean, it's hard to really gauge what it was at Michigan because that offense was so unique in its approach. But I mean, he was solid enough at Michigan, and he got 2nd round grade. Like, they drafted him in the 2nd round. I just feel like that there's a lot of people passing over Roman Wilson in certain situations, and it just seems weird to me. I don't know. He's not really being spoken about, I guess, is the biggest thing. Why do you think that is?
Michigan.
Michigan? You think
Michigan.
It's Michigan? Okay. I think
you didn't get a huge sample size. He was a solid wide receiver for a team who didn't throw the ball well. But now Donovan Peoples-Jones hasn't worked out. Nico Collins has, but it's very much the same thing those 2 wide receivers had to deal with coming out. Both are very good size, very good athletes, but they didn't get drafted highly because they went to Michigan and didn't get used. You ran the ball and you threw the ball only when you had to. Roman Wilson,
Right.
he's not the same as those two guys. I don't think he's as tall as either one of them. What did Roman end up at? 6 foot even?
I
6 foot?
think he's a little bit taller. I think he's like close to 6'2", maybe.
Oh, then he's pretty much. Then you can say the three because I'm pretty sure those two guys are pretty much the same thing. So.
I think he was fairly comparable, measurably, to those guys. Let me check here. Nope. Sorry, he is smaller. 5'10", 186. So he is smaller.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so he doesn't have the same measurables as those guys, but he's, I think, more well-rounded than those two were when they came out. Again, Nico Collins has worked out. Donovan Peoples-Jones hasn't. That could be situation. That could be coaching. Who knows? Yeah, but it's Michigan. Give me Roman Wilson over Ricky Pearsall all day, every day. And I don't care that Ricky Pearsall was drafted in the first round by San Francisco.
I thought that was very interesting.
It was.
I thought it was a very interesting pick. I thought it was a very
especially when you had the wide receivers still sitting there that were still sitting there. So many other ones that you could have went. You honestly could have went with Ladd McConkey over Ricky Pearsall, who I think is a better player than Ricky Pearsall. I don't know. I don't know why you make that pick. But
it was a very interesting pick because, I mean,
I'll take the chance of Roman Wilson over him every day, and he's going 4 or 5 picks usually after him at least.
I mean, and that's the thing with the Roman Wilson pick is I almost would rather have Roman Wilson over Troy Franklin.
I can get down with that. I mean, you pretty much have the same path. One is probably more well-rounded with less tape to go off of. One is way more upside with more tape, but also more bad things that he does.
Well, see, my thing with Franklin though is a slow 10-yard split. And I mentioned it on our ranking show. Mm-hmm. He has a slow 10-yard split, and I don't really like his size. He's got very good top end speed, but his 10-yard split, like that's the most important part. Like everybody looks at the 40-yard dash and they go, "Oh, he ran a 4.2," or "Oh, he ran a 4.1." That's fine and dandy, but if you can't separate within the first 2 to 3 yards of the NFL, or the first, even 5 yards of the NFL, chances are you're not going to succeed, no matter how friggin' fast you are. Plain and simple. Another guy that I feel is getting disrespected, and it's a guy that I really like, is Xavier Legette. He's been going in the second round. He was obviously the 32nd pick in the NFL draft of Carolina. Carolina obviously offensively looks like a boneyard, but this is a new regimen again. I know the ownership is terrible, but it's a new regime. It's a new offense. They have a young quarterback in Bryce Young, and he has a good situation because he has a 31-year-old wide receiver or 32-year-old wide receiver on the other side, and not really much else more. I know they drafted Jonathan Mingo, who will hopefully for them progress into something, but it's not a situation where he can't not see the field. And he's been going in the second round. In the draft that we were talking about earlier, he fell all the way to 211.
I mean, that's the fault. I mean, that's I don't know why he went that far there, because I mean, I only have one other one really to go off of, but in general, I think he'll sit in the middle of the second round. One of the problems is he was 1 year at South Carolina. People don't want to take into account how bad South Carolina was, but he was really only 1 year.
Yeah, for sure.
And same with Roman Wilson. You don't have these prolific numbers to look back on. I don't know why though. We look at Ladd McConkey, who very similarly to Roman Wilson played on a team that ran the ball, was just very good, did not need to throw a ton, and didn't. So that they won games by grinding it out and winning the game by controlling you.
Yep.
And now the situation in LA is probably better for Ladd, so that's part of the reason he's going to get drafted higher, because you're very devoid of talent there for the most part compared to Pittsburgh, and your quarterback is better there than what Pittsburgh currently is boasting for not knowing who the heck's going to throw them the ball.
Right.
But I mean, Xavier is do it all. Get the ball in his hands. He's going to run you over, kind of guy.
He's
And I
fast.
just
He's
don't
got
know
the
if people
size. Like,
want to trust it. Don't want to trust that offense. Don't know who he is. I think that's also part of the reason with Roman Wilson and Xavier Leggett. They don't know who these guys are. They don't really watch college football, so they didn't hear these names, in the mainstream until now, and they're just like, oh well, if I didn't hear about them, they must not be that good. Let me move on to this guy that I've heard Marshawn Lloyd's name so many times. I've heard this guy's name so many times. So,
yeah.
it's the only thing I can think of why.
Yeah, and that very possibly may be the case. I mean, I really like Xavier Leggett. I mean, that to me, I feel like you could get some really good fantasy players. You're not going to get elite or studs, but I think you could get a very good amount of fantasy players in this second round, depending on how your league drafts and what happens. Because, it's one of those situations where a lot of these guys landed in spots where they needed to be and don't really have much in front of them to not be able to see the field. It's a very weird dynamic, especially at that wide receiver position, because you think wide receivers every year there's 40 coming into the league. But this year it really felt like they was really top heavy with the wide receivers, and a lot of them landed in spots where you're like, I don't hate that for that guy, or I don't hate that for that guy. Ricky Pearsall is probably the only wide receiver I could think of that was kind of like, first of all, why? And second of all, why?
And I mean, at least as a fantasy community, he's being semi overdrafted, but not crazy overdrafted.
Right.
Like,
yes.
We didn't push him up into the first round just because he got drafted in the first round in San Francisco. He's
Correct.
going high second, so it's still too high. But at least we didn't go, well, let's just throw him up here. So at least we stayed semi skeptical on that situation. But you bring up a point, and you talked about this pre-show where all these wide receivers, and we know they're not all going to work out, and a lot won't, most likely. And I feel like we're falling into a trap because it looks so good. They all went to these great landing spots and this and that and the other thing, and it's like, oh, I'm going to get a guy in the third round. I'm going to get Jermaine Burton in the third round. He's going to be the next T. Higgins, and it's like, yeah, all of that looks like it could be, and we get so excited, and when it doesn't work out, we're going to be like, well, what happened? What happened? I mean, he went to the Bengals. It's like, because it doesn't, unless this just is the most prolific draft class ever, where we have so many guys work out, it's not going to. And it's really hard during this part of the season to see that, because it's rookie fever, and it's Keon Coleman went to the Bills, so he's going to be great. He's going to be great. They don't have anybody else. He could also be Devin Funchess. They didn't have anybody either. He could be the other really tall wide receiver that Carolina drafted 2 years after Devin Funchess, or 2 years before. Kelvin Benjamin, that's the one.
Kelvin Benjamin.
You would Kelvin Benjamin, who one of them just signed to play basketball in some Caribbean league.
Devin Funchess.
There you go. They could be those guys. They could be Sammy Watkins, where maybe they're good for a few years, and then they just decide to play one game the whole season and be great in that one game and do nothing else. They're not all going to be Jamar Chase. They are not going to be CeeDee Lamb. They are not going to be Justin Jefferson. And we really need to temper our expectations on those third-round guys. I know I said Jermaine Burton is that guy who's falling, but that's what the idea, because he's going in the beginning of the third round. Maybe I'll take him over Ricky Pearsall, because I would take him over Ricky Pearsall. I will not draft Ricky Pearsall because I do not believe in Ricky Pearsall. But I'm also not in the idea that he's going to be better than Rome Odunze. Maybe he will be. Who knows? But I understand, most likely not, because if you're not drafted, I think it's like the top of the third round in the NFL draft, wide receiver hit rate gets really bad after a
Yep.
certain point in the third round.
Well, and that was part of the other, part of what I was mentioning pre-show is, like, does this draft class feel like it's too deep to the point where we're kind of setting ourselves, like we set the bear trap out for the bear, and then we forget about it, and we then end up in the bear trap because we are like, well, it looks so good. You know what I mean? Like,
If you went wild and crazy trading away 25 and 26 picks, which again are drafts that don't look great. You can't judge 26 yet, really. 25 doesn't look great. But if you went wild and traded like all your picks, even over trading to get these 24 picks, yeah, probably. Because you're just going to be sad next year when you don't have your second because you traded it for the 3-1 to draft Jermaine Burton and he doesn't work out.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, like, a Jermaine Burton, a Malachi Corley, like we talked about those two guys landing in spots, and like the talent is there. And to be honest with you, as much as I think Malachi Corley's being underdrafted, he's not a guy that you also want to overdraft either, right? You're not going to draft Malachi Corley and be like, I got the next Puka Nacua. Woo, woo. You know what I mean? Like, because you don't know. Like, even with Puka, like he was NFL ready. He had NFL talent, but he would fell to the fifth. And how often does that really happen? It doesn't happen often. So it's very, you have to still temper your expectations. I wouldn't say be out on these guys. Like, even some of the second round wide receivers and Ricky Pearsall in this situation, I wouldn't say be out on these guys, but I would say definitely don't draft a guy and expect that you're getting an elite talent at any given point in time with those. Draft these guys with the potential upside that they can actually end up being great. Elite is going to be much harder, right? And a lot of these guys, even though they're in good situations, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Legette, who we mentioned, who I still really like, Roman Wilson, Malachi Corley, Jermaine Burton, who was the other guy that we mentioned too, that's in that same window as Roman Wilson? Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, even in New England, they're completely void of talent. Like, those guys that you're drafting are going to be good, hopefully good flex guys that you can flex in and out. They're not going to be guys that you're going to, with the hopes that one of those guys hits, right? That's basically what you're hoping for.
Everybody wants them to be a wide receiver one and this top guy, and of course that's what you want. If you got two of those guys, let's say you took Jermaine Burton and you got Xavier Legette or Jalen McMillan, let's say you got both of them. And those guys could be consistent wide receiver threes, fantasy wide receiver threes.
Yeah.
NFL. Consistent fantasy wide receiver threes for your team. That's a good thing.
Yes, it's an excellent thing.
Don't want to look at that. You could win more by having two wide receiver twos and two wide receiver threes than having one wide receiver one
and a wide receiver
maybe
four.
A wide receiver three and a wide receiver four.
All right, yeah.
This idea that they have to be top 12 is the problem. If they're top 36, you're winning. You're winning.
Yeah, for sure.
And especially if you have five of them. If you get 5 top 36 wide receivers, you're going to have a very good fantasy team.
Yeah.
It's the idea, well, I didn't have any in the top 12. Okay. And they finished at 13 and 16 and 22 and 28. Like, 13 is only one spot away. Most likely, there's only a couple point difference from the guy at 12.
Honestly, it's probably only a couple point difference from the guy at 7.
That's probably true. But you had the guy also at 15, where the guy who had the guy at 12 had the guy at 48.
Right, exactly.
You did better.
Yep. Yeah, I would take, like, as much as I would love to have 5 guys in the top 10, I would take 4 guys in the top 36 over 1 guy in the top 10 and 1 guy at like 35. Like, to be honest with you, like that and that's a mistake I used to make. I full-fledged will admit it to you. As my progression and my evolution of fantasy football has come, that was a mistake that I made that I am no longer really started making. I have understood the value of being able to get guys that are going to be in that range, and the more that you have it, the better. So that way you're not looking at it going, I can't flex this guy into this spot. You absolutely can. Because if he's averaging you enough points, like 10 to 11 a game, it's not flashy. It's not 37. It's not 35. But that 10 to 11 could be the difference at the end of the week. By the time that Monday night game is over, you could win by 8 points. And guess what? It was that last flex guy that you put in there that gave you that 10, 11 points that put him over the top. Like, it's just, as my evolution has been, I have been better with understanding that. So I also don't sell the farm for him though either.
No, and I think it goes somewhat with running back too, but in an opposite-ish way where I don't want the running back that's finishing at 20.
Right.
I want maybe a guy who can finish in the top 10, and then my other one hopefully gets me like 16. But if they're not, sell them, get a wide receiver, and try and get a different guy. Move on from them. Get rid of him. Rachaad White has been a guy I've been looking to sell all season because I like Rachaad White. He's a very good running back. He is not the long-term guy in Tampa Bay. It's just and not in a bad way. It's just not who he is. He's not going to be. He does not get better and better each year. He's gotten better in fantasy point because he's gotten more passes. He caught more passes. He's more touchdowns. But his yards per carry is not that great. And those things catch up fast. Capitalize on it. James Robinson was one. He had these great first 2 seasons as this undrafted guy, and someone offered you a first for him, and you went, I'm going to hold. No. Those kind of guys don't last very long. There was a reason they went undrafted. Phillip Lindsay, great first 2 seasons, undrafted running back. Sell them when their value is high or die with them. But don't sit there and think, I'm going to have the guy for the next 5-6 years. It's just, for running backs at this point, unless you literally are a top-tier running back, you're easily replaceable at any moment.
I'm also going to say that I know it's Dynasty, but I'm also a little bit surprised at how much higher, in some cases, Jonathan Brooks is going over Trey Benson.
Have you seen a huge gap between them?
The biggest gap I saw was Jonathan Brooks going at 110 and Trey Benson going at 205.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's a huge gap between those two because first and foremost, Brooks probably this year alone is probably not going to be ready until November. And Brooks is a guy that, even though he looks good with what we've seen from his tape, played limited at Texas because he played behind 2 really great running backs prior to. And we still don't know who he's going to be coming back from injury in the NFL. Situation's great. Draft capital was good, especially for a running back. But he's coming off an injury. Now, on the flip side of it, Trey Benson had a ton of carries at Florida State. He had a ton of work at Florida State. His athletic profile matches, if not even better than Jonathan Brooks. The only difference between the two is literally the workload. And Benson wasn't banged up as much as Brooks was in a smaller sample size. Right? Like, so it's just surprising to me. Usually I would have expected these guys to be like 1 or 2 spots apart, but they've been pretty wide apart in several of the drafts that I've had. And it's really surprising because they're both in very similar situations with the team that they're on. The only difference is Benson has a chance to see the field to take over that backfield sooner than Brooks.
I actually would probably put their timelines very similar. I don't see James Conner getting moved off of all that fast just because Arizona, I think, likes him.
If he's ineffective, which again, the cliff hits hard for running backs early.
Sure, yeah.
If he's ineffective, I don't see how the backfield doesn't become Benson sooner rather than later. And of course, that's hypothetical, but I'm just saying,
I for both of them, I feel like they're gonna take over probably around the same time ish in general. I mean, in the 2 drafts
You
I've
don't
had,
think Brooks' timeline gets pushed back, coming back from injury? Do you think that he's going to come back and immediately take over that backfield?
it just depends on, I think, the team. If they're actually playing well because they've put pieces around Bryce Young, couldn't think of his name for a second there. Totally blanked on Bryce Young. Put pieces around Bryce Young. Canales is a good offensive mind, and I mean, you're talking about 2 running backs ahead of him who aren't that good. It's not like Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard are like world. I mean, I could see a world where he doesn't see the field at all this season because they let him recuperate. I could also see a world where he goes out there and just outplays both those guys and they play him because he's just the best running back.
I fully expect
So
him to outplay both Chuba
I'm just saying,
Miles when he's healthy.
In Arizona, Connor hasn't been terrible. They seem to like him. So I don't see them going off of him again unless their season goes off the rails and then they go, well, maybe they trade him or they cut him to go because they don't need him and they give Trey Benson the keys. It's 2 teams who aren't that good but have made good moves. So who knows if they're like middle of the pack? I mean, nobody thought Pittsburgh was going to be any good this last year, and they hung around. These are 2 teams that could do that. They're not as terrible as they were last year. They could also be 2 teams that don't win more than 2 games. Totally possible for both of them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I don't look at either one of them and go, well, he definitely has a better chance to get starting carries way before that one. Because I don't disagree. I wouldn't draft one way higher than the other one. I wouldn't sit at 1-9 and go, oh man, I got to definitely get Jonathan Brooks here. But in the same sense, if I'm looking at 1-9 and a running back is what I need on my team, I also wouldn't be against it. I haven't seen them go that far apart. They're usually within like a handful of picks most of the time. Well, in the 2 of them, but sometimes though sometimes that's tough because the end of that first round are a lot of times either you trade it for them as a team who's rebuilding and you're just trying to get whatever picks you can get, and you've maybe had 2 first rounds already, and you're like, okay, well, I want to get a running back on my team now. So you take Jonathan Brooks because you're like, okay, well, he's probably not going to play this year. He's got limited his injury. I could sit on him. Or you're a contender and you look at Jonathan Brooks and say he's the best running back available. I'm taking him. Again, I have running backs ahead of him. I don't need him right away. That makes it tough. For me, I don't look at them as being they're the easily top 2. I mean, Jalen Wright lands in a good situation because of play style, not because of the 7 running backs ahead of him. Blake Corum lands in a good spot that he could see carries, but not in a where he's gonna just take over a backfield.
I just
Marshawn Lloyd lands in a spot where
you have Kyren Williams and then you draft Kyren Williams.
Yeah,
like between the speed factor, the 40 times, and in their playing style, and I'm not sold on Kyren. I think Kyren had a great year last year, but I'm not sold on Kyren, and I'm not sold on Blake. It's just not who I'm not going out of my way to acquire either one of those guys.
I wouldn't be shocked if they're a 50-50 split because they're both similar and play very similar and do things well. They're both good. They're just not great.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to totally eat into each other because they're both good and not great. Because neither one of them is going to say, well, this is for a game. They're going to be like, okay, we're going to roll with this guy. He's on fire. And then the next week, Sean McVay's going to go, well, I'm going to go with that guy this time because it's his turn. Because that's what Sean McVay does.
It is. Yeah, it is. All right. I am going to go. I'm going to go with my next question here. And I'm going to give you a interesting hypothetical. Not being the next of, but who could be in a similar situation as Puka Nacua was last year? A very late round pick that has or a 4th or 5th round pick that has the potential to come in and do kind of what he did. If I mean, obviously not what he did, because let's be honest, that may never happen again. But somebody who can contribute like that and become a staple and a mainstay.
Where was Javon Baker drafted? I don't remember.
Javon Baker was drafted at 401, which I think is a great steal in the league that we were talking about and used as.
No, in the NFL.
Oh, in the NFL, I think it was a fourth round, maybe fifth. Fourth or fifth rounder.
So, for me, it would be between Javon Baker and Brendan Rice. And Brendan Rice is a very solid wide receiver. He obviously lasted till the sixth round, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But he has a father who played in the NFL, so he has at least somebody giving him information of how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very good wide receiver, but he lands on a team with not a ton of competition ahead of him. And even a team that drafted Ladd McConkey, but they're not the same. Ladd is a inside slot style type of wide receiver. Brendan is an outside type of wide receiver.
Yeah.
They could be very good together. I don't remember who the Chargers have at wide receiver outside of Josh Palmer. Oh, Quentin Johnston. So there is a world where Brendan Rice outplays Quentin Johnston. It's not out of the realm of possibility, especially since I think Brendan Rice fits a Greg Roman and John Harbaugh offense better than probably Quentin Johnston does. Because Brendan Rice is a lot like Roman Wilson in the sense of run the ball. He has very good hands. You can get you the 4 or 5 yards you need type of player.
Yeah.
I'll go Brendan Rice there.
Okay. I like Brendan Rice. I mean, I mentioned him in the little, sleeper round or sleeper pick or whatever. But for me, it's going to be Luke McCaffrey.
You've been definitely grabbing as much Luke McCaffrey as you can get.
Well,
I think
the value. I think the value is great. I mean, this is the 100th overall pick. He was a third round selection, and he played quarterback and moved to wide receiver. So he has athleticism enough to play two separate positions on the offensive side of the ball. What does Washington have? It may not be right off the bat. Curtis Samuel, gone. Terry McLaurin, contract year. No tight end. No tight end that you can really think of that's worth a damn from a fantasy standpoint. I mean, Jahan Dotson's really the only guy in front of him, and Luke you can use all over the field. Like, Luke literally could play the tight end position as that Kyle Pitts type of tight end and have no problem with it. He's got good size. It's not like he's miserable.
Let's also not act like Jahan Dotson has been this
Jamar
Chase style wide receiver so far. He's been good, not great. Offensive has been terrible around him for the most part, but he's also not been like this great wide receiver. So it's not like passing Jahan Dotson is that hard for Luke McCaffrey.
Right.
Not that I'm on as big of a train as you are, but I think it is a good landing spot.
Well, it's not that it's.
You're the president of the fan club, at least in every draft that we've been in.
Well, but it's not that I'm a fan club in the sense of like, oh my god, like this guy's going to be fantastic and great and amazing and all this stuff.
Draft him in every fourth round. You're getting him in the mid fourth round every time.
Fourth round, a top 100 player. Mm-hmm. Like, why would I not?
In a good spot. In a good spot.
Like, in a great spot. So why would I not want to take that risk and that value? You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's great value. You take a look at Luke McCaffrey. You take a look at where Jacob Cowing, Dylan Lobb in Las Vegas, Ray Davis in Buffalo. I'll give you Javon Baker because I like Javon Baker. Audric Estime, Braylon Allen in New York, where they have fucking 9,000 running backs.
Malik
you know
Washington.
What I mean? Huh?
Malik Washington.
Like Ben Sinnott, which we talked about already, as far as
Aeneas Smith.
Aeneas Smith. So like, why
Will
would
Shipley.
Will Shipley, like, why would you not want to take that value? And to me, that's great value. A top 100. And so again, it's not one of those things where I'm like, oh my god, it's the second round, it's pick 210. I got to take Luke McCaffrey. It's literally pick 404. Like, I'm going to try to trade back in a cheap pickup for a guy who went in the top 100, a third round wide receiver, and landed in a beautiful spot to be able to be a playmaker for that squad. Now, does that mean it's going to work out? No, but what did I really lose if he doesn't work out? Pick
Nothing.
404? Pick 405?
Yeah, nothing. I mean, Ray Davis went ahead of him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Ray Davis.
29-year-old Ray Davis.
so
Braylon Allen.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Braylon Allen, who's got 3,000 running backs in New York, and they drafted another one after him.
Audric Esme.
You know what I mean? Like
Kamani Vidal in some leagues.
Yeah, the Chargers.
Yeah, all because he went to the Chargers. That's the only reason Vidal is even being considered, because the Chargers drafted him in like round 7.
Yeah. So again, like, for me, it's Luke McCaffrey, and yes, you can call me the president of the fan club. You can do whatever you want. I don't care. That's fine. I'm just saying, from a value standpoint, it just makes the most sense to me to be if I'm sitting, I know you were just fucking with me, but I'm just saying.
Have you left the draft yet where you didn't get him?
Yeah.
Somebody else got him ahead of you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a couple drafts. Yeah. Yeah. I just
they overdrafted them then, probably.
It's a good chance, probably. Good chance, to be honest with you. No, if I'm just sitting, if you're on the clock or somebody's on the clock at 404, 405, and you're looking at your team and you're just going, oh, man, there's a wide receiver I can just go grab, make a trade for Luke. I mean, or get into that spot and take Luke there, because again, it's a top 100 player, literally to pick 100 in a good landing spot, and he's athletic enough that he played 2 positions.
Oh, crap, I forgot we drafted a 10-team league as a regular Dynasty. Completely forgot that draft is over.
Oh, you're talking about Atlanta?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that.
I'm just saying, it's another.
It's a 10-team. Anybody with 10-team leagues out there. Yeah.
I completely forgot about it. And there's another one where Marvin went 101.
Yep.
I want to say, did you trade me?
I think I made a trade.
Yeah, you did.
I traded you a third for that, right? A third
for Luke McCaffrey.
And
I'm like, I think you drafted to get McCaffrey. Yeah, I think that was the first one too. When that was the first time I saw you take him. And then it was like dominoes. Every draft came, and there he was as Michael's last pick. Well,
I don't understand why he's falling so far into the 4th. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, partially because he's a new wide receiver in general. Like you said, he played quarterback, moved to wide receiver. Where did he play? Air Force? Rice. I knew it was a blue and white team. Not like people watch, talk about, see a lot of Rice games, stats, anything like that. I mean, half the people who probably only know his name is because he's Christian McCaffrey's brother. So it's who he is, and we know, even in the NFL, how much you're talked about by the media.
Yeah,
it sometimes gets you overdrafted, and for fantasy, it's even worse.
Yeah, I just from a standpoint of just looking at it, man, it just, I traded you the third. I traded you the third for him there in that round, and primarily I traded you the third for him because, like you said earlier in the show, the 2025 draft class doesn't look that fantastic. I'm not sold on that 2025 draft class outside of a handful of picks or players. So to me, I'm not giving anything up in that third for a 4th round pick that could end up being, somebody that contributes, right away.
Well, let's play this game. So let's look at some guys ahead of him. So I'm going to go back to even the mid-3rd round. Who would you rather have, Jermaine Burton or Luke McCaffrey?
I would probably say Jermaine Burton, only because I like what Burton brings.
Kimani Vidal or Luke McCaffrey?
Luke McCaffrey.
So Kimani Vidal in that draft went 3-6. Luke McCaffrey, you got it 4-8. Marshawn Lloyd.
Probably Luke McCaffrey.
3-7. Malachi Corley, I'm assuming you're going to take over Luke McCaffrey.
Corley, I'm going to take over McCaffrey.
So let me put it this way. I got Malachi Corley at 3-8 in that draft after Kamani Vidal and Marshawn Lloyd went ahead of him. Let's just talk about that.
This is the 10-team league?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Javon Baker. Split it down the middle. One league you take one league you take other.
Yeah, I would probably diversify on that one. I'd probably take Baker one and then in McCaffrey in another.
Jalen McMillan.
Same thing. Split it right down the middle.
Bucky Irving.
I'd take him over Bucky. I don't like Bucky. I know that he's in Tampa Bay, which might be good for him, but I don't like the player overall.
Devontae Walker.
Split it.
Will Shipley.
No, McCaffrey. Luke.
Roman Wilson.
Roman. I'm a little bit higher on Roman, so did
Audrey
Roman go in the
Gretzky.
4th?
Yeah, he went 4-4.
Holy shit.
Luke, to you drafted him at 4-4.
Oh, that's right. I did. Oh, that's right. I was so excited about that. I couldn't believe that he was still there. That's right. Audric Estime, I would take never. So Luke McCaffrey.
Dylan Laub.
McCaffrey. I
Brendan
don't
Rice.
understand the Laub love. And who? Brendan Rice?
Either.
Split it.
Brendan Rice. So every running back you're taking him over in that spot. Every one of them.
Yeah.
Which I totally agree with. And then you pretty much have them with every wide receiver falling in that area. Almost go either way outside of like three of them.
Yeah, like Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson's the only one that I said that to because I think Roman Wilson's a second round grade, even in a 10-team league. So
yeah, Roman, Jermaine, and Corley are the three
yeah.
wide receivers you for sure would have. The other 3 or 4 wide receivers,
I'd probably split it. Yep.
Whoever you want, but every running back, and that's the problem. They're running back, so they're being overdrafted. You're taking Marshawn Lloyd. And sorry, Eli, this was you. You drafted him at 3-7 instead of just taking one of those wide receivers, probably because he wanted to draft a running back. But it's like at that point, just take a wide receiver.
Shout out to the Big Fet for joining in and watching us here on the show. Appreciate you, tuning in here. The show, by the way, Big Fet, is every Thursday at 8:00 p.m. Sometimes a little bit later if I'm putting my kids to bed or not. But Kamani Vidal the hype is totally unwarranted. Yeah. The hype's unwarranted, and it reminds me a lot of the Dylan Lobb hype, because Dylan Lobb was super fantastic at New Hampshire. He was really the only thing that they had over there, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, he landed in Vegas. He's gonna go do this." But it's like, it's still that you're talking about 2 running backs from smaller schools, one smaller than the other, going to situations that look good on paper, but are probably realistically role players at the running back position more than they are ever going to take over the backfield. But I completely agree with you. The Kamani Vidal hype is totally unwarranted, in my opinion, as well. And maybe I'll eat my words later on down the road, but that's where I'm at with it.
So they didn't comment off of YouTube or Facebook. We do have a few comments backing up my notifications. Annoying.
Oh yeah, I saw that
in our C2C league. So shout out to Bivu.
Yeah, Bivu, for sure.
The Big Fed mentioned it over there in the chat too. And what if I am in my bunker?
I mean, yeah. Well, that's the second time Brent has asked me if you were in a bunker. So I'm assuming it's just because of the one light, and then it looks black on the screen behind you. So
it doesn't see. It look green to me.
Well, there's
it is green. It is green.
I know it's green. I've seen it, but I'm just saying it just looks black.
But it looks. To me, it even looks green on the thing here. But
yeah. You just can't see mine because I have pictures of my kids and stuff, so I blurred my background.
Yeah, well, I also tried blurring mine out, and then depending on
half your head was missing.
Exactly. So I just don't do that anymore because where the blur picks up mine for whatever reason didn't work very well. So
yeah,
I don't blur it anymore.
So any of the listeners out,
let's go back to Vidal real quick.
Oh,
literally because he got drafted to the Chargers. It's the only reason. It's literally, and because of John Harbaugh. it's like we don't want to realize they signed J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards
Mm-hmm.
to run the Greg Roman offense that's going to be there because they ran it in Baltimore together.
Yep.
Together. The two of them together already.
Yep. It's a Baltimore reunion in Los Angeles, and Kamani Vidal is all of a sudden suddenly going to be the guy. I don't know. I mean, J.K. Dobbins does have an injury history, so Vidal may be able to see the field, but, you know.
Maybe. Until they go sign a Dalvin Cook like they did.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So, J.K.
Yeah, Spiller is there.
Gus, that's right. Oh, and Joshua Kelly's still there, too. Like, they didn't cut Kelly, so... and Isaiah Spiller. But, I mean, I think Spiller might get cut just because he was from the previous regimen and never really quite fell done. Yeah, I mean, Kelly sure
but so could Vidal. He was drafted in, like, the 7th round.
Yeah,
it's not like they're, like, took him in the 2nd round.
Yeah,
like, if they were drafted a running back in the 2nd, I would totally, understand. It was the 6th or 7th round.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it was late. And that's a lot of. I know running backs, it doesn't matter as much anymore, but still. Anybody that's listening, anybody that's watching, anybody that's tuning in, by all means, leave some comments, ask us some questions, do anything you want. If you have a trade offer that you want to talk about, or whatever, you have a roster you want us to look at, just let us know. Hit us up, hit me up. I mean, most of you guys, probably know me, because you're in my leagues or whatever. Just do any of that, and we'll talk about it on the show. We'll go through it and whatnot. And if you actually want a guest spot at one point in time, let us know too. We'll get you on here. As well. Mark, do you have anything else before we wrap this up here?
No.
We
talked a lot. Yeah.
We talk a lot? We talk a lot every day.
We talked a lot today. We talked a lot.
We do talk a lot. We talk a lot in general, period. Big Fet, I don't know what's going on in Devasty. What do you mean? What are you doing? Are you drafting 101?
No. We already did Devasty. What do you mean?
Oh, okay.
I told you he was upset about having to rebuild because of how that league is set up compared to ours.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So what you do in Devasty is petition for something. I don't know. Always drafting 101. Yeah, well, I mean...
At least for the next 4 years you are.
I mean, draft better at 101, maybe? I don't know what you want to do.
That's the problem. When half of your roster has to be quarterbacks that don't play anymore because you got to hold your Devy guys on the roster.
Yeah,
screwed.
Yeah, that definitely does make for. I mean, you got some good talent coming in here on the Devy side. It's just a lot of Devy picks, like a lot.
But I mean, how else do you rebuild in a Devy league?
You have to. It's the only way you can build a super team. To be honest with you, the top half of your roster is really not that bad, bro. You got Jaden Daniels. I mean, hopefully Levis hits, but you got Achane, Benson, Watson. Hopefully Dotson kind of, does a little bit better to this new regimen.
You're hoping Watson has some good games. You can move off from him. You're hoping Levis has some good games. You can move off of him.
But he has Drake May. But he does have Drake May sitting on the bench. So I mean, he has.
That's what I'm saying. They're not long-term guys for that kind of roster, because by the time your roster is good enough, they're not going to be. So those are two guys you're looking to move early. Hopefully they play super well. Same with HN, to be honest with you.
To be honest with you, you have no depth, Fet. That's your biggest problem.
You can't. We barely have depth.
But his is worse than ours. He has
because he's trying to be though.
I know,
he's trying to not have depth so that he gets the 101 each year to continue to try to get better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, your starting lineup is solid, but I mean, you have to. You're playing the waiting game, honestly, Fet. And to be honest with you, man, like there's nothing wrong with it. It looks good as far as some of the Devy, roster. Prospects that you have waiting in the wings. Just
understand you're putting a donation in for a couple years.
Yeah, you're going to be putting a donation in for sure. And maybe, and I know that rookie draft, the way that they do that draft is fucking weird with the whole, like, you can draft a Devy spot and a rookie spot. Maybe next year in the 2025 draft, focus a little bit more on getting players that are already in the league instead of drafting just straight up 5 Devy guys for depth purposes. Because
it depends, though.
Well, but he's going to have those guys come into the league. He's going to have the guys that are in the draft class come into that league, but maybe chop it up a little bit. Maybe 1 or 2 Devy guys instead of 7. you know,
It really just comes down to, do your Devy guys hit or not? Because even in our Devy leagues, I've had I hit on probably 5 or 6 of those Devy picks, and it looks wonderful now. And I didn't hit on most of those Devy picks, and it looks terrible. And that's with not having to carry them on my team or draft them into my rookie spot.
It's like my Return of the Empire.
It really
team.
depends on how well you draft those Devy picks and
like
if they hit or not.
It's like my Return of the Empire team. I missed on almost every single pick that I drafted in that fucking league, and my team is god awful.
I can't remember if mine's OG, Devy, or Shadows and Masks, but one of those I hit on Devy picks like they were everyone. On the other one, I drafted EJ Williams. That's all you got to know.
Hey, he's still in Indiana. He's still got another year. You never know.
Year 8.
Year 8 in Indiana. He's
just in general, because he didn't start there. He was one of the it was the time
he got hurt
of Devy drafts when Clemson had every great receiver and you just had to find the right one. And it was none of them. It ended up being none of them.
Yeah, pour one out for the SMU running backs as well. Kamar Wheaton, LJ Johnson, and Jalen Knighton. Because Jalen Knighton for some reason transferred there. No, not to SMU. Zach Evans is Zach Evans was
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss.
But someone from Ole Miss went there then.
No.
There was somebody.
Kamar Wheaton from Bama, LJ Johnson from Texas A&M, and Jalen Knighton from Miami of Florida.
They're all there now together, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all there.
I'm saying before this, there was a season when someone went there before this that was like...
Fucking no, I have no clue.
It was somebody. It was somebody that Eli was high on, I feel like.
Oh, my boy Zach Evans is in North Texas this year. So he's a North Texas Mean Green. Zach Evans, the Minnesota running back, the one I drafted in literally every season.
Oh, that's Zach Evans. Okay. I'm like, the other one's in the NFL, and he definitely isn't going back to college. So
I mean, he might as well. He probably should have stayed, to be honest with you.
No, he probably should have left the year before.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, probably should have left the year before. All right, well, let's wrap this up because we're obviously way off.
Maybe
we're obviously off the rails. Yeah, you probably should have stayed at TCU. So we're off the rails on this one. I think. Maybe not. I don't know. Anyways, if you have any questions, obviously hit us up. Let us know. Hit us in the comments. And we'll obviously answer in the best of our capacity without turning it into a 45-minute excursion. Speaking about 45 minutes, Daryl, you're on the clock. Make your pick already, goddammit. Yeah, so that's going to do it. So he's Mark Onks. I'm Michael Washington. This is Dynasty Academy. Class is dismissed.